Hello friends, this is Odds, Burden of Proof Not On Me, and today we're going to be talking about the MMR again. Yesterday, the developers of Dead by Daylight made a Q&A stream where they reveal some facts about how the MMR system works, and people have gone mental. They have freaked out about something that I think is not worth freaking out about, personally. I'm going to review the information that they provided and put that together with old and new data mine information that we've been made aware of. And with that, I'll try to paint the most full picture of how the MMR system works in this game. And from that, I'll try to explain what I think is the biggest issue with the system and what I'm concerned about. So let's begin. Yesterday, lead game designer Patrick was answering MMR questions when he explained that the MMR system gives you points or takes points from you based on whether you win or lose. And whether you win or lose is a completely, pretty much binary option that happens on a one-on-one basis. You as a killer are on a one-on-one with each of the 4 survivors that you're playing against. So if the survivor escapes, they win. And if you kill them, you win. And at the end of that, all of the MMR points are added up and given or taken from you. The higher or lower the MMR of your opponents, the more or less points that you'll get, just like in chess. With the exception of hatch. If a survivor escapes through hatch, it's been determined that that's not a very good indication of skill, and that is pretty much a tie for both sides. So, this of course means that a survivor that runs the killer for 5 gens and carries the team, if they die at the end, the game considers them to be the loser of that interaction. And this made many people upset. Let's address it really quickly. I think this is not that big of a deal. If you are a survivor that is good enough to run the killer for 5 gens, on average, you're going to win many games. The system will probably place you where you need to be anyway. If you're playing solo, you are more likely to play with other people who are also good, who will do more and pull their weight and help you out. In the previous system, this wasn't the case. If you were rank 1, you could be playing against a killer that is good and with teammates that are good, or with teammates that are complete new players that don't know what they're doing that will let you die. And these players would have been very rewarded. They would have stayed at rank 1 or red ranks or whatever, because hiding and getting the hatch in the previous system was very profitable. In the new system, not so much. It doesn't encourage it as much. There's also the fact that if your teammates die and you're the last person to die and you outlast them, you will lose less points. So overall, your points in the long run should be fine, even if you have a weird match where you do super well but you end up dying. It's not that big of a deal. If you're playing with your friends, it's even less of a problem. Obviously, your friends should be able to protect you and make sure that you don't die, even if you did really well. But even if they can't do that, even if you're the one person that always sacrifices themselves so that everybody else can escape, that is still good. If your 3 teammates escape and their MMR goes up, even if your MMR goes down a little bit, in the next match, when all of your MMRs are put together, they will, on average, be higher. And you'll be playing against better and better killers, as it should be. Now, the developers themselves admit, wouldn't it be nice if you could do all of that and escape? Wouldn't it be nice if the game could capture all of this complexity that goes into every interaction? I think it's very difficult. If a Wraith chases you for 5 minutes, breaks every pallet in the map, plays horribly, and then at the end they uncloak and hit you, the game thinks that that was a 2-second chase, when you and I know that that's not the case. There's a lot of variability, and the developers have given up on trying to account for it, and instead they made this system that works on these variables that are not ideal and do not necessarily measure skill as much as some people would like. So the argument goes, why even bother making this system if it's not perfect? Because according to the developers, and I think this is fair, this system is better than what we had before. When we played on the all rank system, you could kill everyone very quickly and be punished. You could escape very efficiently and be punished. You could just wait for the hatch and theoretically be punished. And at the top level, rank 1, the disparity of skill was very high. With the new system, apparently the matches are more fair for the overall bulk of players. For me, do I like it better than before? No. Is it better for the average? Is it better for the majority of players? Probably. That being said, let's analyze everything we know so far about the system and see where maybe the real problem lies and what we should be focusing on and what our feedback should be pointed towards. Very well. So, as we have explained, the MMR comes from the interaction between the killer and each survivor individually. So, at the end of a match, whether you have killed or allowed several survivors to escape, you will be gaining points, and that will move you up or down in this MMR ladder. The ladder looks a little bit like this. A player that is just playing Dead by Daylight for the first time will typically, apparently, start at 1,100 points. If you're a veteran of the game and you've played a lot of killer before, instead of starting at this starting point, the game will assign you a starting point based on your performance over the past few months. And this assigned point will be for all of your killers pretty much, with very little variability. So that means that if you're a very, very, very good killer, your nurse, your trapper, your Myers, your hag will all be pretty close to the top. But after that, each killer will move individually. Survivors, on the other hand, all of them share the same MMR because they all play the same, right? So there's no issue there. So what happens here is that depending on how this 4v1, which is a 1v1, 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 depending on how it goes, you will gain or lose points. In a best case scenario, as a killer, it looks like you can get about 20 points. In a worst case scenario where everybody escapes, you can lose about 20 points, more or less. And that's pretty much it. So as you can see, it would take 40, 50, or 60 matches for you to start climbing to the top of the ladder from the starting point. So this is something that you probably will get to more or less slowly, unless you already started pretty close to it. Things that we know do not affect the match. And this is quite important. The blood points that you get do not affect it. The length of the match does not seem to affect it after all. Whether you brought items, add-ons, offerings, doesn't seem to have any bearing. Whether you got a lot of hooks, whether you got a lot of unhooks, doesn't seem to really affect it. The only thing that affects it is whether you escape or whether you die as a survivor, and whether you kill or whether you let them escape as a killer. And of course, you will get more points if the survivors that you're playing against or the opponents you're playing against are supposedly much better than you. In this system, you will almost always be paired with people that on average are very close to your points. Very, very close to your points. So for example, if I am a killer that is, let's say, on the exact 1,900 cap, I should be playing against people that are very, very close to me. Sometimes it can you can play against people that are a couple hundred points above you, but that's rare. Typically, it's people close to you. So, what is the deal with these caps that are at the bottom and at the top? This is very interesting. This is another point that people, I think, wildly misunderstood. So let's explain it. This is the cap that is practical for matchmaking, but you can go past this cap. It's very, very important to say. So much like chess or any other Elo rating system, the limits on this cap are infinite, although practically they pretty much cap out. In theory, you could, if you won every single match, you could very slowly go on forever. But in practice, you start capping out at probably something close to 3,000. So let's say that we win all of our matches very slowly, very slowly, very slowly, and we get super, super high, and we end up in the 3,000, pretty much top 0.01 percentile of all players. If I am here, there will be almost no survivors in this stage. So my matchmaking here would be horrendously bad. Literally, I would be waiting forever. So what the developers have done is they've established a dynamic cap that they can switch on and move on and on as necessary. So this cap right now seems to be at 1,900. And that means that if I have a group of survivors that is at 1,900 and there is no one in between, the game will happily move me back and pair me with these survivors. So I will be playing against them. So some people are interpreting this wrong, because they're like, well, that means that if I'm very, very good, I will still play against people that are at the cap. So what's the point? Well, the point is, if at this point of the day, there is another group of survivors that is closer to me, and they're also on this insanely high level, then I will preferentially go be paired with these survivors. And then the other group will be paired with someone that is closer to them. So this means that depending on the time of the day and how many survivors are available, if you are an incredibly high MMR killer, you are more likely to go against the rare but definitely out there incredibly high MMR survivors. So this does mean that there is no, the limit that we thought was pretty hard set is actually a lot more flexible. And assuming that you play at a time of the day where there are these groups that are at your level, you will be facing them more often than not. So I think this is the real issue. If there is no cap to MMR and we do not take into account things like add-ons, items, map offerings, add-ons for items, the killer that you choose, what this results is probably what you have seen if you play at the supposed high MMR. When you play Survivor, you play against the same 3 or 4 killers with the same 3 or 4 add-ons. Your teammates, of course, run the same 3 or 4 perks, almost invariably. And when you play Killer, you play against the same survivors, running the same map offerings, running the same perks, typically running the same items or variations of the same 3 or 4 items, because these items are really, really strong. And that's the problem. This game has a real issue of balancing when it comes to bringing or not bringing the absolute strongest things. And the MMR system does not take that into account. And I think that's the real issue. If you play Blight with the absolute strongest add-ons, yes, you will be going against better and better and better survivors with the strongest possible items, and you might be comfortable there. But if you decide to drop those add-ons, and instead you just become better and better through your own skill without relying on super strong add-ons, items, offerings, you will still be paired against people that bring those very strong items, add-ons, and so on. So I think that's what probably makes this system very frustrating for content creators, very frustrating for people that obviously want to win, but do not want to see the same builds and the same items and the same everything every match to do so. And I think this is the biggest deal with this. This game really does put you up against people that have gotten to a similar level through completely different means. And I think that's what makes me not like it so much. Not so much the fact that it's kills and escapes. I think that's an improvement over the previous system. But the fact that if you become very, very good and you are incredible at escaping using no crutch perks, or incredible at getting 4Ks by playing a low skill killer, a low tier killer, you're only going to be rewarded by playing against people that are probably on average sweating their butts off. That is my personal biggest issue with this. I would like to know about your personal biggest pet peeve with this system. That being said, please understand that developers that work on this video game, they make this video game for us. If we are little shits and we harass them and we say the nastiest things, I'm sure they'll do their job because it's their job, but they probably won't be as happy doing it. So please do not be a child towards them. Do not spew bile towards the developers. I would prefer that they are upfront and they are transparent, even if their systems aren't perfect, rather than secretive and keep things to themselves and do not want to share to the community for fear of backlash. Personally, that's what I would prefer. You let me know what you think, and you let me know if this video had any information that was useful to you. Thank you so very, very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And if I forgot any super important fact, I will be letting you know. From the top of my head, the only thing I forgot to mention is that yes, your killers, even though they start individually close, they can individually separate, and the top is not capped the same way the bottom is not capped. So everything I said about you going as far as possible at the top is the same at the bottom. If you are very, very bad, you will be paired with people that are at 800 unless someone closer to your level shows up. So this is a very symmetrical system as far as I understand, and many things about it could change dynamically as we go on, but this is, as far as I know, the best information that we have. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Feel free to let me know what you think. I'd be very, very interested in seeing the discussion.